Okay, so yeah, I think I'm finally ready to wrap up this series of what I would kinda like to call first impressions about the phone, and those videos were also recorded on that said phone with its internal microphone and the front-facing camera, its highest resolution, and I have to admit that I really enjoyed this series quite a lot, because it gave me a chance of a little bit of a different approach to tackle a preview. It felt way more natural to me, and I actually believe that it kind of brought me closer to my audience, which kind of proves me right in the high amount of interaction that I've seen, like for example 2 days ago when it started with the Sony Xperia 10 and 10 Plus. Highly controversial, highly disliked, and actually quite surprising in some way, but just check that video in the comments and you'll know what I am talking about. I mean, way more expectable it was yesterday when I covered the Samsung Galaxy S10, and now I have to say I'm curious what's gonna happen today when it is about the Xiaomi Mi 9, which by the way once again is recording this video with the front-facing cam and the internal mic, and I'm actually pretty interested to see how good that mic is, because usually Xiaomi mics are not known to be all that good. But before I'm actually gonna start off with the first impressions video, I also want to make one thing sure. I am not using the global version, which is already available, which usually starts with 6 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of storage. What I'm using is the Chinese version that I got from tradingshenzhen.com that already packs 8 gigabytes and 128 gigabytes, and over time might be the cheaper version once they also actually have the global version available. But just to know which one I'm actually using because of some possible software limitations and so on. But let's actually get already to the thing that impressed me, surprised me the most when I took this phone out of the box. It is the design and build quality. Because the moment I took this phone out of the box, it felt so incredibly thin. Reminded me a lot at the OnePlus 5T in terms of thinness. Great in-hand feel, great ergonomics with a button placement that I really like. We have the teardrop notch that is pretty subtle, that isn't really obtrusive at all. We got a fingerprint reader that actually works pretty nice. I would say like kind of OnePlus 6T level and so on. Overall, this phone feels so high quality, so premium, so slick, so smooth, and it's just a kind of eye-catcher with the blue. You will see it obviously in the review once I'm ready for that. But generally, this phone just has such an amazing in-hand feel. And then I just noticed how important it is to me, and that makes me even doubt that if I should keep the S10 and maybe jump to the Mi 9 after all. I mean, there are some compromise that you have with this phone. Ones that I've actually already mentioned in the previous video, like for example getting to that point already, which would be the display. I mean, I just have to tell you it like this. It is a very good 1080p AMOLED display, which is definitely more than good enough for everyone and will make a lot of people super happy. But I also have to say that it is just a very good 1080p AMOLED display, and I said that this year I wanted finally AMOLED QHD. I wanted just something even better, pretty much the best possible, and that is just not what you're getting. But if you are looking for great value all around, then for what you are getting, this display is super nice after all, and it is a beautiful display after all. The DPI for me is a little bit of a mixed bag, because I have to reduce the size of everything, so kind of raise the DPI, but then SwiftKey that I'm using gets a little bit small, but that's a minor thing. But let's get to the next thing that I also want to be better, which is just not a thing here, which is the speaker system. We only get a mono speaker here, where we on some, by now actually quite a lot of phones already gets dual speaker systems, and even though I would say it's amongst actually the best mono speakers, body firing one, once again it's just a mono speaker. Very nice and loud, good quality, doesn't distort. So if that's good enough for you, you will be actually highly satisfied with this one. Now the next thing that is for now the best that I've used so far, maybe if I exclude the 120 Hz of the Razer phone, but just in terms of raw performance, due to the Snapdragon 855, the performance is absolutely mind-blowing. Everything is super smooth, extremely snappy, super responsive, and it's not a crazy huge jump over the 845, but after all it is a noticeable one, and especially since it's just pushing 1080p, yeah, it runs crazy good. But what is actually way better than I expected is the battery life, because we only get a 3300 milliamp hour battery, which is even smaller than on the Samsung Galaxy S10, but that one has the higher resolution, and yeah, in my case, the pretty crappy Exynos version. The battery life so far seems pretty impressive, because when I completely charge it, which by the way is done in 1 hour, which is pretty impressive. I used it for about 2 hours on Wi-Fi, and now guess where I landed? At 80%. So pretty much 10% per hour. If I would calculate that up, it would be ending at about 9 to 10 hours. For the battery size, for the size of the display, this is pretty impressive and just shows me once again how efficient a Snapdragon can be. Yeah, just looking at the Samsung, which is more like it half that battery life. But yeah, okay, next thing, software, MIUI. It's MIUI. I don't really have to get into that. Camera, I didn't get the time to use it yet, but I also really don't want to do it just yet because I don't want to spoil it for the proper review. I've tested the front-facing camera, it looks pretty nice, but especially for the video, I mean, we don't have autofocus, which was to be expected. We have a fixed focus, but the quality so far on the preview that I'm seeing looks pretty good. But I mean, it just comes down to, once again, the value of this phone, which is actually pretty impressive. Because just think about it, you pay $450 for the 64GB version. Let's say in a month or so you will pay like $400 the most for, I think, the 128GB version with 8 gigs of RAM. And then you will get what seems to be a very, finally, maybe even flagship level camera. Not quite so sure about the video, but the photos, what I've heard from, it's supposed to be above an iPhone level, which I'm still a little bit, doubting that. But otherwise, super amazing design. A very nice display that for what it is absolutely super nice. The speaker is actually way better than I expected, because even though it's just mono, it's a really good one. Performance is crazy good. Battery life seems crazy good. The software is what it is, and the camera is finally supposed to be closer to the flagship than it ever was before. And that, for a price that is already now like half of what you pay for a flagship, where you get maybe a high resolution, maybe a dual speaker system, and maybe a little bit more of a streamlined software, and maybe possibly a slightly better camera, but definitely not that battery life. I guess I can already tell you now that this will be the biggest contender for the best budget or best value flagship phone. I mean, I kind of still don't really consider it as a flagship phone until it finally gets Quad HD or dual speaker system or something like that. But I mean, what you get here is actually pretty impressive, I have to say, because I don't really see a downside of it yet so far, because usually the camera was not on that level, and if you want a flagship level camera, you had to just look elsewhere, like for example HTC sometimes, or Google, sometimes an iPhone or a Samsung phone. So I'm really curious to test that out. But if you can live with not the best display, not the best speaker, pretty much everything else will be pretty much the best or top 5 or so. And that for a price that is half of what you usually pay for the others. I mean, obviously after a few months, everything will get closer. This will kind of land at maybe $350, $400, and the flagships will stay at around $600, $700. But even then, it's still way cheaper. And for some people, the compromise that I see as those aren't really even that. Maybe even an upside, because some people say, I want 1080p because I get better performance, I get better battery life. And I'm totally fine with 1080p. I don't see the difference in daily use. Yes, then this might be that phone that you're looking for. Obviously, I think the closest competitor to this one will be the OnePlus 7. But that's a little bit too far to actually get it into the equation just yet. But so far, like I said, exceeded my expectations, unlike the Mi 8 did, and actually impressed the hell out of me so far. I just really like using this phone at the moment. So more about that, obviously, maybe not in a week or so, more like 2, because I still have to cover a few other phones. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about this phone. And yeah, way too long again, but who cares? I enjoy it. Okay, until next time. Bye.